It's Retro Podcasts with your host, Retro Lion. We talk music, entertainment, films, and more. And now, here he is, live, Retro Lion. Welcome back to Retro Podcast. I am the host, Retro Lion, and today we have the Nelms Brothers, also known as filmmakers for the movie Fat Man, and welcome to Retro Podcast.
Thanks for having us. Thanks for having us.
So I've got a quick question. What project are you currently working on at the moment?
Well, we've got a couple of things in the hopper right now. A couple of things we're really excited about. We wrote a big sci-fi action film we're about ready to go out with. That's super exciting for us. Our love of like The Thing and Aliens and Close Encounters. We really tried to do something that got us super excited, and in a retro sense, reaching back to our roots of what got us excited about making films in the first place.
And these aliens, is it going to be like people in costumes? Is it going to be CGI, or is it going to be?
It'll be both. I think it'll be a bit of both. Yeah, it's gonna be obviously, Ian and I love our practical effects. So as much of that as we can do that makes sense, we like to throw it in there. But yeah, I think it'll be a mixture. I know it will be.
Very cool. So it's almost like an old school 1950s, 1960s, or 70s sci-fi.
No. I would say it's definitely contemporary. More in the vein of like maybe like, if you were going to reach back a little bit, it'd probably be like more like 80s, like James Cameron type stuff, or
Nice.
Carpenter, kind of a mix of Carpenter and Cameron, and our own thing, our own flavor in there as well. So yeah, it's super fun. It's big. Those don't come easy. So we'll have to see what the landscape's like as we're trying to put it together.
Nice. And how did this idea come together? Since you're both brothers, how did the idea of this production company come together?
Almost I guess just our mutual passion for film. We just set out to start making stuff, and through that, found ourselves, writing and directing together. I don't know that we definitely set out to make, oh, hey, let's be filmmakers, and we wanted to do it together because obviously we're blessed in that we get along and that we enjoy the collaborative process with one another. But I don't know. I wouldn't say, it's just kind of a road you start off on, and then next thing you know, you're there. Yeah, I don't think we ever thought it was a real job, right? So it was like, I thought I was going to be coaching wrestling and writing novels while I was an English teacher. And I think, at first Esh thought he was going to be an engineer. So he took a lot of mathematics and was on his way to an engineering degree. And then I just realized I hate math. Then he realized at a certain point past trigonometry that he hated it. I would rather just draw the bridge and not understand why it's not going to fall down.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Did you both go to the same university to study film, or did you go to separate universities?
We didn't. So we didn't go to film school. Ian went to Cal State Bakersfield on a wrestling scholarship and fell in love with literature, writing while he was there. And then I went to Kansas City Art Institute on an art scholarship, but ultimately didn't finish there. I came back home. I got a 2-year degree from junior college, but went to art school, got the scholarship, didn't love it there, came back home, and Ian and I were just like, you know what, we're just going to move to Los Angeles and give this a whirl. So that's what we did. We bought a camera, and we just started making movies guerrilla style in the streets of LA. And then eventually that turned into more. Yeah, in the early 2000s, the prosumer camera, the DVX 100 came out, and it was digital tapes. It wasn't HD, but the next version was. But this version had enough that where you would film something, and if you lit it really well, it could look like 16 millimeter. And you squinted your eyes. And you squinted really hard. It would look like 16 from 10 feet away from your feet. But we started shooting with that camera, and we shot 2 feature films with that camera, and then upgraded to the Red One on Lost on Purpose, which is kind of our first, real budgeted feature with like a 30-person crew. The other 2 films we did before, Squirrel Trap was the first feature we did. It was a $1,500 feature film. And we basically crewed it ourselves. It was a 3-man crew, me, Esham, and our dad. And that was basically it. We shot that thing, got into a few festivals with it, got the bug, went back, told all our, got really excited, told all our friends, hey, I think we can make movies here.
got together with 6 friends. We raised $5,000 between all of us, and then we shot a movie called Night of the Dog. And that one won a bunch of film festivals that we'd gotten into with the previous one, and then got into and won a bunch more. And that really was kind of like a true launching point as far as like we Miramax called. We started actually we got a manager, like, a lot of people got representation off of that little film just because it was really entertaining, not because it was, such a technical feat, but it was written well enough. We won a few audience and writing awards. It was written well enough to be really entertaining and acted well enough, by all the guys in it that were also writing and directing. Everybody wrote, directed, produced, starred, except for me. I hired some professionals.
And 4 years ago, you did a Christmas film, an action Christmas film called Fat Man with Mel Gibson. He plays Santa Claus, and a kid gets a lump of coal and hires an assassin to go kill Santa. It becomes like a Wild West kind of fight between the two. Now, how did that idea how did that idea pop into your head? I'm just curious.
Yeah.
I think it goes back to our first television that we bought in the early 2000s in our humble apartment, 1-bedroom apartment in Hollywood. We bought like a 32 inch Trinitron flat screen, and this thing's now it's like you're hauling a bus around, but at the time it was the first like flat screen, and it looked fantastic for the day. And so we bought a DVD player, and the first 2 DVDs we bought were Unforgiven and Unbreakable, the 2 uns in our lives.
We just went to the UN section.
The UN
like,
section.
2 movies are here.
And those 2 films, with our like Unbreakable, we were big fans of Unbreakable at the time, and we were like, okay, well, what could we do that, really grounding of a superhero? And Santa came to mind, and then we're a big fan of westerns. So that kind of gives you, I think, at that time in that early 2000s, that type of feel, that Leone Western type of feel that's at the end of the film. Those 3 characters, good, the bad, the ugly. There's 3 characters kind of swirling around, moving towards each other. Of what we were trying to accomplish, or what got us really excited about the idea,
Mm-hmm. I thought it was really cool because I actually have it right here.
Yes.
Oh, amazing. Thank you.
What I really love about this movie is that it's a very different take on Santa Claus himself, because from the way how you're telling the story, it's basically if Santa was a real character. Now, as adults, we all know that Santa is not real, but in this movie, it's portrayed as if he was a real life figure and what he would be like in real life.
Yeah,
exactly. And that was it. Like, it's funny when we crafted that story, people would be like, oh, well, we want there should be a scene where like Santa Claus is like tiptoeing through houses and like delivering presents. And there should be a scene where his silhouette passes in front of the moon. And Ian and I looked at each other and we're like, that's what's in every other Christmas movie. Like, we want to make the Christmas movie that's all the scenes between those.
There were also, the suggestions of like, can we gonzo up these action sequences? Can we have reindeer shooting grenades out of them? Just like, look, that's got to be a different movie, because it doesn't match the tone that we're really trying to hit throughout this thing.
Okay, reindeer shooting grenades out of their asses. That's hilarious.
It's going to be,
and there's room in the cannon for it.
It's funny. Speaking of reindeer, I have a Christmas comic coming out later this year called Night at North Pole,
awesome.
And in that story, Santa is a former pirate, and the reindeer are disgusted because they've been locked in the barn all year round, and they have to pull the sleigh all year round. So they decide to turn on Santa. So they take this magic drink and they become werewolf reindeer, and it's Santa with an axe going against his reindeer.
Sounds great.
It sounds fantastic.
It actually is, not to brag, but it is, and besides being a comic coming out this year, it's actually in the works for a short film, and we're trying to sell the short film. Hoping a studio would buy it and turn it into a feature.
Oh, congratulations, man. That
sounds like a lot of fun.
That's the sort of swings that you got to go for, brother. So I appreciate that. Yeah.
It is.
And the nice part about the filming locations, they're actually all in the UK.
Oh, wow.
Make that trip. That's going to be a fun trip.
Have any of you been to the UK to shoot movies yet, or not yet?
Not to shoot. We went for a film festival.
Yeah, the film festivals took us there, which was really fun. But we haven't shot anything there yet.
Yeah. And one last thing about Fat Man, but the movie itself was shot in Canada. So was this your first time going to Canada to film a movie, or have you been to Canada before?
We'd been to Canada before to like scout certain things, but we'd never shot anything there. That was the first.
I mean,
yeah,
yeah, we've been to Canada to scout for that movie in a previous incarnation.
a
So
year.
at one point, Fat Man was going to be more of a studio picture, and that changed. So we ended up making it independently. But we scouted a couple locations on a year before we ended up shooting it, or 2 years before.
It really kind of came down to creative differences. They wanted us to make a little bit of a different movie, and they were like, well, hey, if you want to keep the movie the way that you have it, then it's probably not quite what we're looking for. So we found another partner.
Well, understood. Well, it was a perfect filming location. And how did you get Mel Gibson for the role?
Man, I will say, like, and like, shooting in Canada wasn't easy, but the whole time we were shooting there, we were like, man, it was meant to be shot here. Because it really did. There was some magical things that happened while we were shooting. First and foremost was finding the homestead, Santa's dwelling up there with all those fixtures and that old house and everything. Man, it was really miraculous in a lot of ways. So, yeah, we agree with you, man. It really fit the picture perfectly.
The Mel Gibson part of it was, the producers we had. I mean, they were like, "Who do you want in this?" And we were like, "Look, we'd seen Mel Gibson a few years prior in a film festival, or not a film festival, but like a film screening of Hacksaw Ridge." And it was a long shoot apparently, and it was a grueling post process. And he kind of came out and was giving a Q&A and talking to the crowd. He was kind of hunched over, kneading his beard. A man with the weight of the world on his shoulders. And we instantly saw the character, and we were just like, oh my God, like he'd be so good as Chris. We became pretty obsessed with getting him in that role. And when the producer said, "Who do you want in this?" we said, "Look, we've always seen Mel Gibson in this role." And they said, "Okay." And they reached out to Jack Wiggum, who was his agent at the time, and he dug it enough to pass it on to him. And then we got a call, or I got an email actually after like a month. I got an email, weird nondescript email address that was like, "Hey, I enjoyed the script, really funny. You want to sit down for a chin wag?" And no sign off. So we were just like, who the heck? Who is this? And then we were getting so many emails in about, possible financiers or possible other people coming on to help out. And I just wrote back very perfunctorily, like, "Oh, thank you so much. We love it. Love that you enjoyed it. Who am I speaking with? Sorry, there's no sign off, and I can't tell from the email." And he wrote back, "Oh, sorry, this is Mel. Sometimes I forget." And we were just like sitting next to each other at the time. We're like, "Oh my God." We were really excited. So we called up his agent. We were just like, "Hey, sounds like Mel dug it. We'd love to sit down for a chin wag, whatever that is." And he was like, "Okay." They called us back. They're like, "You got 45 minutes in this coffee shop in Malibu. Guy's got a busy day." So we went in, met him. 4 hours later, we came out. And it was we just really got along. He really got the film. It was really fun to sort of talk through a lot of the films, he'd been a part of throughout his life, directing and starring in. And then,
I remember like about at the 2 or 3 hour mark in that conversation, we were like, "Oh, should we actually talk about Fat Man now?"
Yeah,
because we had just been talking about everything else. And so then we talked for about an hour on the picture, and then he was in. I mean, he was very enthusiastic about it.
So anyhow, we are coming down to the end of the interview, and we have 2 questions left. And what advice would you give to folks that want to go into film or want to go into screenwriting or filmmaking?
I mean, for us, it's just do it, right? We became in a town. We were trying to figure out how to break into business. We didn't know anybody. Ash he became a storyboard artist. He started, trying out to be a storyboard artist so he could get on sets. That got us on a couple of little commercial sets and whatnot. It got Esham working with some pretty high profile directors, which was really cool because he got to see a lot of different styles, a lot of different prep, a lot of different ways people would approach material. And probably gave us a lot of different cool perspectives and choices in our own work of like, hey, well, you could approach it like this, or you could approach it like that. And then we just started making stuff when we would, we didn't really have anybody to shop our scripts to, but we would show them to the neighbor who was the first AD, and the other neighbor who was an actor, been in a few things, and we get comments, we get suggestions. And then we were just like, you know what, let's write something a little smaller that we can actually just shoot and go shoot it. And I think that's the problem, right? Is that people just haven't seen our voice up on its feet. So we went and shot a couple of things, Squirrel Trap and a couple of shorts, then Squirrel Trap and Night of the Dog. And we were just, hell bent on making something and forcing people to watch it, really.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely it. Yeah, it's just making something was our path forward. Like I said, we weren't formally trained in film school. We were sort of self-educated through our love of cinema. Obviously, we surrounded ourselves with a bunch of people who love movies as well. We'd sit around having nightly talks. I worked in a movie theater for a long time. Ian and I did a bunch of research, on our own, just renting everything from like Godard to French New Wave movies to the '70s Hal Ashby films. Just learning what was beyond our just what we'd learned to that point, right? Like we didn't go, like I said, we weren't formally trained, so it was like, hey, we need to understand the canon of film and what all the different genres and such. But I think the second part of that would be like probably getting a collaborator that can be honest with you, that can help motivate you. And I obviously I have that with my brother, yeah, that can diffuse the workload, so that helps a lot. Yeah, so I think that's sort of our two.
I don't think there's one path forward, though. We've seen people do it a lot of different ways. We've seen directors just direct their way there, not write anything. We've seen writers write their way there, direct something later, or choose not to write something. We've seen actors, get a bunch of tiny roles and have a rough time, and then we've seen people do a bunch of tiny roles and then get something big and just kind of sparks them a little bit, and they kind of take off. We've seen people plucked out of nowhere. We've seen people work for 2 decades and not get that break yet, and then maybe start writing for themselves. Like there's no really one way to do it. I would just say if you're really passionate about it, because it is a long game for most people, 99.999% of people, it's a long game. And a lot of that is you honing your craft, you getting better, and learning how to navigate. But I think the people who fail are the people who don't make anything and don't learn from not making anything. So if you don't make anything, you can't learn how to get better at it. And you're just sort of always sitting around with this script that you wrote 15 years ago and saying, we're going to shoot this someday. And when it actually gets made, if it does get made, it may have been where you should have been 15 years ago, in my opinion, and you, in these 15 years, maybe you should have grown a lot more and written a lot more and learned a lot more so that you'd be that much more, they'd be that much better. I mean, that's our approach. We're not afraid to fail. We keep coming out and swinging, trying to improve ourselves. We try not to take what the critics say too seriously, but we also try to learn from what the critics say, because if you hear the same thing 50 times, there's something there, But if someone wanted a romantic comedy and you gave them a horror film, that's just not, that's not the movie. So there's nothing to worry about there. It's just not their movie. So yeah, there's not one way to do it. I would just say go out and make stuff and be passionate about it, because it is a long game.
Thank you. And we have our famous retro podcast question. And is there a retro product you both grew up with in the 80s and 90s?
I mean, the VCR is probably the biggest thing we grew up with that we don't see anymore. There was definitely a quality feel to those VHS tapes that I don't get anymore. And whether it's like, you're at like unearthing a time capsule and you're pulling something out and you're with those VHS copies, a lot of times you feel like you're literally dusting the dirt away as the heads are trying to sync up, and it's then it's all a little gritty and grainy. And Tarantino has that podcast where he and Roger Avery are looking back at those VHS copies and in their archives, and there was something so great about putting those tapes in and having 10 minutes, 15 minutes of trailers come on. And that was part of the experience for us, right? You watch those trailers, you watch movies you never heard of, or even thought would possibly exist, which is how we found Army of Darkness. We saw a trailer for it. We were just like, what is that? Like, I have to see that. We're like 10 at the time. I miss that. I miss the discovery. I miss the Blockbuster of it. Used to go to Blockbuster when we were older and just peruse the aisles, because they'd have the mainstream section where there's 15,000 copies of one thing, and then you meander back a little further, and the back rows would have one or two copies of something, that had a couple of festival leaves on, or that you'd never heard of but had a great review on it, or had a couple of actors that you were excited about that you never knew they did that movie, and or something cool that you're like, that cover looks badass. Like they put a lot of care into that artwork. I want to check that out. That looks like a vibe I want to get into. So yeah, I don't know. I miss that part of it, because now you're online just kind of going through thumbnails, and if you didn't hear about it on some social media site or some industry site, you don't find it. You just don't, or hear about it. It's rough to find stuff.
Well, thank you. It was very cool. Army of Darkness is one of my favorite movies as well.
Oh, good. I just showed it
It's a
to
good
my
one.
11 and 9-year-old, and they loved it. Thumbs up, man. Thumbs up. It's awesome.
Yeah.
I just watched it the other day as well. I was like, oh, I need to watch this again. It's been a few years, and it didn't disappoint at all.
Yeah.
It was good.
Well, Bruce Campbell has certainly showed that he still got the Ash vibe, even though he had that small appearance in Doctor Strange 2.
I feel
Oh,
like
yeah.
I feel like I gotta get. I haven't watched them yet, but just watching the revamp of the Ash TV series, the Evil Dead TV series, I really want to see that. I've seen a bunch of clips from it, and I'm gonna want to watch it with my kids. So I haven't dove into it yet, but it looks fun. It looks awesome. Looks like they did it right. The clips I've seen with him in his trailer house, gearing up and running into people, and people finding him, demons finding him. It looks pretty damn entertaining. So. That guy's still got it. That guy's great. He's such a great actor.
Oh, yes, definitely. And Ashom and Ian, thank you again for joining today's episode of Retro Podcast. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on social media, and wish you luck with your next project.
Thank you.
Have a great one.
Wish you luck with the comic book, dude. It sounds like a lot of fun, man.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having us on.
I'll send you a link.
Yeah. Yeah,
Dude,
we get it
please
done.
do.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Spotify and follow us on Instagram. See you next week.